All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our webinar. This is how Delano, California is improving permit processing through automation. My name is Chris Anderson. I'm a part of the SMARTGov business development team here at Paladin Data Systems. Give you a little background on today's webinar. It's going to be a 30-minute case study review of the City of Delano, California, and how they have achieved great efficiencies using permit automation software. In a minute, I'll introduce my co-panelists from the City of Delano. But first, just a few logistical details about the webinar format. The webinar, again, is going to be about 30 minutes. For your audio, you can listen through your computer speakers, or you can dial into the conference line. The number is up here on the screen. We'll take about 5 minutes or so at the end of the webinar to answer any questions that the audience might have about the City of Delano and/or SMARTGov software. And you can submit those questions via the chat function on the GoToWebinar side panel. With that, I'd like to bring in my co-panelist, Jerome Keane. Jerome, do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Jerome Keane. I work for an engineering and planning firm called Quad Knopf that's based out of Visalia, California in the Central Valley. We have 5 offices up and down the valley that provide various services to both public and private clients. We also work as contract staff if a city needs help in that capacity. So me myself, I've worked previously for Madera County for about 7 years, where we did all kinds of building permit and planning permit processing and had to do a lot of collaboration with other departments. So we had a lot of basis for, or at least I had a lot of basis for at least a permitting template or permitting program that would need to be implemented when we started with the City of Delano in February 2014. So.
Great, thanks for that introduction. With that, I wanted to dive right into the City of Delano case study. So Jerome, maybe give us a bit of background on how your firm engaged with the City of Delano, and then a bit of background of the city's challenges and what they looked for in a permit solution.
Sure. So the City of Delano is, like I said, located in Kern County, California, and at the time they really were utilizing the Black Bear system, but they weren't utilizing it probably in its full capacity. They were repeating functions that could be done or could be automated in some fashion. They were using Excel to track permits on a monthly basis. They were actually using Adobe Publisher to create their actual building permit form. I don't hear of a lot of places actually using Adobe Publisher for anything other than making graphics or pamphlets or posters. They're actually using it for their building permit templates. There was really no coordination between departments. We actually have a contract with Kern County Fire, which is located in Bakersfield, 35 miles away. And so they actually are part of the building permit process that folks were actually having to go all the way to Bakersfield to submit an additional set of plans to them. But basically what happened was the city, my company was already contracted as the city engineer for Delano, and they asked if we had planning services available. We said yes, and lo and behold, I came here February 2014, and basically when we walked in, we knew building permits were a mess. Permits, you couldn't track how long we had it. You couldn't track where it was in the process, how long it had been in review, how many inspections had been done, had there been any notes clarifying the submittal, any communication with the customer. So what happened was Roman Dowling, the public work and city engineer for the city, actually did most of the research, and he was looking for a solution that would allow the city to better track their permits, that would make it a lot simpler and automate the process. Fees were a big issue. You would look on one fee and the fees would be different than on another permit. Basically trying to come up with a solution to where anybody at any time could give you an update on a permit, and you didn't have to sit and try and call the building inspector. You didn't have to call. They actually have a contract with an outside plan checking company. You didn't have to call them to see where they were with their permit review process. And actually the biggest issue we had was the digital record retention. We had the permits rolled in a room, basically, or they're out in a C-train container, and what ended up happening was if people came in and asked for the plans, there was almost no way for us to efficiently find them other than maybe sending somebody to the C-train container and digging through those records. So the solution was ultimately, set upon to go with SMARTGov by the city based on their research of it being cloud-based, accessible, very affordable, and easy to set up. And in addition, it carried over a lot of the Black Bear data that had been inputted, so at least it had some some historical records that we could go back and refer to.
Sorry, yeah, next talk about a little bit about some of the results that you guys have been able to track since the implementation of SMARTGov. You guys have done a great job of capturing that data so that that you can actually present and see the efficiencies and improvements that have been made within the department.
Well, I mean, in any quote-unquote database, the key is having the data, right? So the implementation of SMARTGov started in May approximately of last year. So we figured that we had a curve of May, and we would just improve from May of last year. And if you look at the efficiencies where we were then to where we are now, that graphic shows that we did 14 permits in 45 minutes. We wouldn't necessarily issue 14 permits in 3 to 4 days because of our long, unautomated process. The capacity that we have to do permits now, with fewer staff, I might add, we went from a permit technician, a part-time building inspector, and 2 inspectors to really one office assistant who hadn't really done any permitting intake or issuance, and we also have other departments that fill in when she goes to lunch or anything like that. So we basically operate with 2 office staff, and they've learned basically by just being automated to take in permits. They know, take in plans, scan them in, and it issues the fees for them. So it kind of takes the learning out of it for a lot of people. So we were able to downsize staff and be more efficient at the same time, which I think is, as my quote said, it's a really good use of taxpayer dollars. The graphic again shows that our capacity to take in permits, it's really, 1.5, 2 people that are also doing other tasks for the city, is really high for us in terms of what we're able to do. The issuance rate also, as you can see, the last 2 months of this chart, and maybe later I'll show the updated chart, but July, I don't think we ever issued 90 permits in a month, let alone took in 91. Basically showing that, yeah, we may have some backlog, but we're trying to keep up with it. The ability of the database to just spit out information like this is invaluable to someone that's managing a department to make sure that you're staying on track and providing a result to the taxpayers that they're paying for. They pay the fees for a reason, and SMARTGov actually helped us pull ourselves out of a perception of being, I'll say, borderline inept, and having limited ability to track the permits or provide information. People come to the city to obtain information. We weren't able to give it to them. With SMARTGov, it's at our fingertips. We utilize it. Building and planning are probably the highest users because we have a lot of interaction with the public but we put notes in there so we know what was told to them. Post-its aren't lost or anything like that.
Right.
But basically, we use it as much as we can so that, one, if planning's not there or someone picks it up, they can pick up right where we left off and say, well, it looks like you're still missing, these components of your plan check, or you haven't paid these fees. It really has helped us to be more efficient with the fewer staff, but then also kind of change our perception with the public. I mean, I had a council member, after we had been doing this for about 4 or 5 months, saying that 70% of his calls were just related to building permits. And
Right.
and basically we made his life a lot easier, and he could focus on other issues with the city by just doing what we're supposed to be doing in an efficient manner.
Right, and this next slide talks a little bit about the reduction in frustrated contacts with the city, whether that was by email or phone call. Talk a little bit about the permit issuance times, the reduction in that as well.
Well, you see the chart. It's always good when you're relating time and it's going down, right? Obviously, when you get to the more recent months, the numbers are really low because we have some permits that are just over the counter. But what we were hoping, and I can show this later from when we started, that over time our permit issuance times have gone, and this accounts for your over-the-counter, your solars, and your large commercial projects. So it's a combination of all of those that our average time in some months has been as low as 57. I'll probably use March because there's still probably permits in April, May, June, and July that haven't been issued, but March, most of them should probably be closed out by now. So 57 days. If you were telling people that the average issuance time is 57 days a year and a half, 2 years ago, they would have just laughed at you. But the data is readily available right when I open it up. I can see what's been changing. I can just click on the month to see if there's any still outstanding for that month. Whereas before, you'd have to flip through the files, you'd have to ask people, you'd have to have them go find it, or you just wouldn't find out. And it was really kind of an in the dark operation where everybody was in the dark. Nobody knew what was going on with certain permits except for one person. If that one person's gone, it's really hard to tell people from the public, sorry, I don't have any information for you, come back when this person comes back. And if they're not even there, then they just get more enraged. So what it really has done is shed the department in a lot better light with the public. And we provide updates periodically to the city council showing this data, and the public becomes more aware of what we're trying to do in terms of use of their tax dollars. We're trying to be more efficient. We're reducing permit times because a lot of people would just refuse to get permits and just do it without them, which is obviously illegal. But one, we had no way of tracking it, even if we found that they were doing it illegally. But two, they were just so fed up with the permitting times that they would just avoid us.
Right. So you mentioned a bit about kind of the not only employees being armed with the information about permits, about the permit history, but also the permit in the process of the life cycle. And then you talked a little bit about how cross-departmentally within the city SMARTGov has helped. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So with any city or local government, you have different types of permits, and you always have cross-collaboration work. So, for example, building permits, depending on the type of projects, usually with commercial projects are reviewed by planning, building, and engineering. Well, what was happening was there was one file with all the plans in it, and it would go to planning first, and it would sit on their desk, and then it would go to building, sit on their desk, and then it would go to engineering and sit on their desk rather than everybody reviewing it simultaneously. And sometimes it would get buried on their desk, it would get misplaced, or they'd be walking around with it and set it on a counter and someone would go file it somewhere. So, I mean, this is a common occurrence, I'm assuming, in a lot of places that don't have any permit tracking system. But not building permits, but encroachment permits. Our HR department does event permits that need to be reviewed by the police department, planning, building, engineering. So what we've done is in all these permits, we ask them who needs to review it, and we insert them, we give them kind of a workflow step in SMARTGov, and whereas it would take 10 days for permits to get approved, they're getting approved in 10 minutes instead, rather than someone having to take the time to walk the file around, figure out where it's at, or give someone a call, have them find it. Probably the biggest one that we have is we use one of our accounts for Kern County Fire, which I said is located 35 miles away. And what we actually do is we scan our plans in, and we actually charge their fee for review. They have a separate fee for review. And so we accept their plans in, and we scan them in so that they can review it in SMARTGov, and people don't have to make the 70-mile round trip to Bakersfield and back. And then at the end of the month, SMARTGov actually does a report of all the permits that were, or all the fees that were collected for them, and spits it out so we can do a warrant and cut them a check every month. So we use it for even agencies that are contracted to the city but aren't located at our city hall to try and make it more efficient for the public.
That's great. I know we wanted to leave a little time for questions. I know you wanted to maybe take a moment to jump into the system and look at some of the updated data that you've been able to capture since the graphics that we showed earlier.
Sure.
So if I can hand over the presentation over to you.
Sure. Okay, so this is, when I sign in, this is the first thing I see. So you can see the continuation of August, and you look at July and August, and we really only were behind on 2 permits. September was pretty close, and then we're kind of off to, I'm not going to say a slow start in October, but and then you can see that our times are still going down. My goal is to try and get it to level off at some point, maybe around 50, but you can see the trends really easily. So this is over like the last year. And I think you can actually go 2 years. So you can see when we started, this is about where we started, and it was almost 200 days. I mean, I don't count this data because this is the Black Bear data that we weren't using. But when we started using SMARTGov, it was right around 200 days. And you can see the trend, it kept going down, and that's really nice to be able to show the public or show the elected officials that you're really improving the process for them. So I also had a permit I wanted to show. So one of the issues that we were having was people would say, my permit has been in here 6 months. And recently we had a case where we said, we've actually only had it 7 days, and your engineer or your contractor has had it the rest of the time, because we track it by using stop clocks. So when we turn it over and it's not in our hands, we start the stop clock, and it'll actually track how many days we don't have it. So like for this permit, we had it for a total of 23 days, and it was out of our hands for 5 days. So really the processing time for us was 23 days for this tenant improvement to a McDonald's. And when you have McDonald's or any other corporate company or big company, you want to make sure that you're as efficient as you can. So we're really able to just see, these were inspections, so it took them 11 days to do the inspections, a total of 1.83 hours for total inspections. This data we're actually using to try and help us revise our inspection fees to figure out how long a solar permit maybe takes to be inspected, a tenant improvement, to try and maybe standardize the fees a little bit more. You can see that everybody reviewed it more or less within, a couple of days of each other. The permit came in on the 1st, and planning approved it on the 1st. I mean, really efficient. I mean, your to-do list is kind of what we live by. We can see that we've already marked these for deficiencies, so we don't have to review them. They've been told that they need to make improvements. Stuff for planners like monitoring, you can constantly have it on your to-do list to go out and do your inspections. So, I mean, we use it. It's a very powerful tool for one, accountability. I mean, accountability is really what you live by in the government sector. Is you got to be accountable for everything you're doing, and that's really what we're using it for. So
that's great. That's very helpful, and it's great to see that the trend, both on the permit processing time as well as all the other efficiencies that you've gained are continuing that downward trend, and downward in a good way.
Yep.
So again, I wanted to leave enough time to answer any questions, get any questions answered. So if anyone has any that they wanted to ask Jerome or myself about SMARTGov, feel free to submit those via the chat function. We've got a few here. This one's a bit about Black Bear's PT Win. Can you speak a little bit about the transition from PT Win and whether Delano was able to preserve the data that they had in PT Win since it's no longer supported?
Sure. The simple answer is yes. The bigger issue is the data's in there, so we can see that permits were pulled. They didn't necessarily finish the workflow in Black Bear, so as we go through, as we find them, we're kind of trying to close them out. Or if we find plans to them, we try and go back and insert the plans. So we have a record of we did something, they paid their fees, what they paid, and everything like that. So at least we're able to go back and track it, going back to end of 2014-ish. But the transition for data was really painless. It was we just had a review period where we reviewed what was transitioned, and then if we found any holes, we just let Paladin know. But it was pretty easy.
Great. And kind of a follow-up question to that. Approximately how long did the implementation take, converting that PT Win data, and maybe talk a little bit about the training that was made available to the Delano staff and your staff as well?
Sure. The transition of the PT Win data probably took about 3 weeks, with us having to check it a couple times. Paladin actually had on-site training at, we have a tech center, so we had, 15 people, maybe 10, 15 people go over there and kind of walk through how it would work after we had kind of a shadowing, if you will, by Lynn at Paladin in terms of trying to develop some templates for us, or at least some data fields. But the on-site training helped everybody. But I mean, from when we got started, I would say we probably really started in April, and it probably took, 2 months before people really started getting it. And now folks just run with it. They know where everything is. They know how to insert things. I really get more technical questions. I'm one of the administrators, so I get real technical questions of why fees aren't calculating, or we want an additional field. We actually were just talking today about adding recurring inspections for entitlement permits for planning. So I get questions more like that, but folks just run with it, and when they want something, we just implement it. If it helps them, we just implement it.
Great. You talked a little bit about the public portal and again, some of the efficiencies that have been gained with that, with citizens being able to access things that they would normally have to come to the city counter for. Can you talk a little bit? I know prior to the webinar we talked a little bit about how the city plans to really grow the public portal and the usage of it, both by obviously the citizens, but also by the staff. What your plans are going forward with that?
Sure. We actually we have a few pilot users, I guess. More of our customers that have projects that are more time sensitive, that they want to know when reviews occur, when comments are needed, and things like that. So we kind of do it more on an ad hoc basis when people request it, but we really want to focus more on process first, and then once we got process down, start rolling out slowly the portal. So we started with the solar permits and having the solar developers submit their plans online, and also roll out some of the information. Like if you go into our public portal, you can actually search some permits on there by address to see what's been done, what the fees were paid, what exactly they were doing, how many square feet the building is. So we're slowly rolling that out, but it's more of, we want to make sure that we kind of have our house in order first, but the public portal, for the users that use it, we have one now that's working on the community center for the city. He asked if he could have access to it yesterday, send him his portal authorization code, and he was looking at it within 5 minutes, and he saw that his plans hadn't been approved yet. So it's very useful for folks that, our time also is valuable, so if they don't have to call us just to check on the status of a permit and they can check it themselves, that's very powerful in terms of savings.
Right. Great. We have a couple more questions here. I know that we're running up on the end of our half hour here, but if you don't mind staying on to answer a couple more questions.
I will answer them all.
Great, thanks. This one's actually about SMARTGov, the software, and I think I mentioned Jeff Pavey is our sales executive for SMARTGov. He can probably field this question. The question is, what payment options are available to citizens, and can we see what that might look like to a contractor or citizen? I don't know if we have time to jump into the system today, but Jeff can go ahead and answer the first part of that question anyway.
Yeah, so I'm guessing that we're talking about through the public portal. The way our public portal works is SMARTGov, we create a connector to a compliant, PCI compliant merchant service vendor. We're agnostic. It can be any merchant service vendor that you're currently using, and through the portal, what it looks like is you're a contractor. You can go onto your dashboard on the portal, and it'll say, hey, you owe all these fees, and you can select which fees you want to pay. You put them in your shopping cart, just like if you were buying clothes from the Gap or something. Works the exact same way, and then you hit checkout, and then all of that data gets it's transferred to the merchant service vendor with a HTTPS encrypted data transfer, and we don't store any of that data or information on there, and then that credit card payment gets processed. So that's definitely one of the core functions of the portal, and that's how that works. And if I'm not sure who was asking that question, I'm happy to show them maybe outside of this webinar, kind of what that looks like and how that works. But it's really clean and it's crisp, really easy to do for the contractors.
Great, thanks, Jeff. There was a question about the permits and whether they were created and submitted with an online solution, and if so, which one? That might be a question for Jerome in terms of the permit.
Okay, I guess for the solar permits, and I mean, you can request whatever information you want them to fill out, but it eventually has to be verified by the city. So what we require is, let's say on solar permits, they submit the number of panels, any fixtures that they'll have, like if they have any modules, electrical modules, or if they're upgrading their panel or their electrical panel. And then there's a place for them to submit their plans, their application. Actually, the application is really just filling out who the applicant is, who the contractor is, who the point of contact is, and it basically creates a digital application so that we have that information. I mean, the written application for the permit is really just a request for information. Once the permit's issued, then they have to sign everything. I mean, we'll review permits by applicants, but they either need an agent authorization form or something like that they need to submit also. So it's really tailored to whatever you want to request as part of the submittal, and it's really just a digital application. You could require a written application too to be submitted, but they would just upload that as part of the submittal process, really, online.
Great. Well, like I said, I think we've gone over our 30 minutes just a bit. I appreciate everyone staying on till the very end. And Jerome, I appreciate you taking the time to tell us a bit about the City of Delano. If anyone's looking for additional information about SMARTGov, our information is up there on the screen. We'll be sending out a follow-up email, and I'll be sure that Jerome's information is included in that. If anyone wants to speak with him about QuadNOP and their services. So with that, Jerome, thanks for your time, and thanks for everyone for attending, and have a great afternoon.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks.